Okay, hello. My name is Victor Wallace II. I am doing my extra credit project on my research paper for alcoholism, and this is me presenting it. Again, sorry, I just got off a plane, so I wasn't able to get a classroom. I tried to project it to my TV, but that didn't work very well as well, so I'm going to try and do both here. So, starting off, what is alcoholism? So, alcoholism, or alcohol use disorder is kind of what I'm going to refer to it throughout both the slideshow and the presentation. It's a type of substance abuse where users have an impaired ability to control alcohol or to stop excess drinking despite adverse occupational, health, social, and economic consequences. So, basically, it just means that no matter what bad situation is going to come from the excessive use of drinking. There's all different types of cases for that these users that have alcohol use disorder will continue to drink while either ignoring these side effects or embracing them and not really caring about them. You can see the slides. Next, just a slide on the history of alcoholism. So again, I talk about this in my paper as well, but alcoholism abuse is nothing new. It's been around for thousands of years, probably one of the earliest substance abuse issues that humans have had in society, starting all the way back over 13,000 years ago in Egypt. And there's even been pieces of evidence found for that they weren't necessarily able to trace all the way back. One example I like that I found during my research was the Sumerians. They were one of the first people to see the dangers of alcohol and kind of at least like document it and research it. They placed rules and regulations around it just to stop people from getting into substance abuse. Obviously, that didn't work too well. We'll get into some other ways to stop it or prevent substance abuse. Alcohol's been around forever. It's almost human nature at this point, which can be a dangerous thing. But not even just human nature. Also, in my research, I found that animals have been recorded intoxicating themselves and being drunk as well. The invention and the expansion of alcohol was caused by the agricultural revolution in the 19th century, which allowed, not the 19th century, the agricultural revolution, which allowed beer and alcohol to be produced very quickly. Again, something I took from your slides, Professor, was about the Irish saying beer before bread, and after they invented whiskey, them not being able to come up with another invention for the next 300 years. I thought was pretty funny. So again, here's just a graph of alcohol use. Again, something I took from your slides. But alcoholism is a wide umbrella that covers many different terms and definitions. Alcohol abuse, addiction, dependence, misuse, all those kind of fall under the same alcoholism umbrella that we will get into a little bit more. Again, just talking about research, everything varies. There's a bunch of different theories and we'll talk about some as well. But there's a varying process with alcoholism and the users, the different types of using, the different types of alcohol, all of that. So, alcoholism abuse. This is the biggest issue I had with it personally. The biggest beneficiaries from alcohol abuse, just like the biggest beneficiaries from any type of substance abuse, are the companies or the people that produce that substance. So according to a study done in England in 2013 and 14, 77% of all alcohol was sold to drinkers. That is above the guideline level. So, the heavy drinkers. Also more in that 30% to harmful drinkers and 48% to hazardous drinkers. So again, most of the bulk of their money, most of the bulk of their revenue comes from people maybe that aren't necessarily diagnosed with AUD, but heavy binge drinkers and people that could be a danger to the environment. So I thought this was really interesting. In terms of alcohol usage, it grew very fast. In colonial America, drunkenness was mainly behind closed doors, so it wasn't necessarily something that you did out in public. But after the invention of taverns and pubs, alcohol became a very widespread thing. And by the early 1900s, alcohol kind of took over. it became more of a problem than opioids or cocaine. This kind of led to a bunch of problems happening with AUD, of course, all the negative side effects to it, and people weren't happy with it, which led to the temperance and prohibition era. That came to a very halting stop. Sorry, you can't see the slides. That came to a very halting stop very, very fast, because putting a lid on that resulted in increased crime rates, a black market, and actually increased the rate of drinking in general. And by 1933, the public was tired. So they went from the Prohibition era to enacting an amendment that banned alcohol. Went from temperance to the Prohibition, which banned alcohol. And in 1933, they got rid of that amendment. And down here are some pictures and old articles from when the Prohibition era was going on. All right, next we're going to talk about is treatment. So some treatment forms we have. The earliest form of treatment dates back to the 1700s when Native Americans, again, first figured out that these were bad effects from it. And they used community responses such as sitting with each other and basically talking about it. They also used natural remedies and rituals as well, which was called alcoholic mutual aid, which is basically where people sit together and try and heal each other as a community. Then moving on from that, I talked about this more in my paper as well, but Benjamin Rush was one of the first people to argue that no, alcoholism isn't a problem of the person. This is an actual medical condition. Something is wrong with it. And it was adopted. And so this is what allowed in the 1800s inebriate homes to open up, which are basically rehab facilities that allow for short stays to get people out of that drinking culture, out of that drinking environment, into more positive habits. And this led the way for New York to open the inebriate asylum in 1864. Then Theodore Roosevelt came along in the early 1900s. He opened the Charles B. Town. He, along with his friends, opened the Charles B. Town Hospital, which was one of the first major drug and rehab institutions. This was for alcoholism and drug addiction. Then after that, in 1935, Bill Wilson founded Alcoholics Anonymous, which is kind of the biggest alcohol treatment we have today that we all have heard of before. And then in 1952, the medical AMA defined alcoholism as a primary chronic disease, meaning that it's nationally recognized as a disease and not just a will issue. We talked about theory earlier. We're only going to touch on one of these slides, which is the biological theory, which I think is most relevant to the alcoholism. So it's basically a study on predispositions concerning alcohol abuse, substance abuse in general, but more specifically alcohol abuse due to a person's genetics. So it's basically saying, is this person more likely to become an alcoholic due to their genetic makeup or predispositions or something that happened with their parents? Are their parents alcoholics? It takes a look at the study of brains and compares that to other people, to healthy non-substance abuse brains, and looks at the difference between the two. And they did find a couple of things, but basically, again, this theory states that if my genetic makeup and your genetic makeup are put together, which one of us is going, they can see which one of us is going to be more likely to be an alcohol abuser or substance abuser. In conclusion, alcoholism has prolonged effects. Sorry again if you can't see this. Has prolonged effects that have wriggled itself right into the centerpiece of our society, which I think is awful. I don't think that alcoholism should be normalized, but I think that it really is, especially in college culture and just our culture in general, entertainment, sports, media. I think that it has been normalized when it shouldn't. We tend to look down on other forms of substance abuse. When we see people, we're like, oh, that's sad, right? But we have our own family members who are alcoholics that we just kind of, oh, he's an alcoholic, and just kind of move on with it. But we don't treat it like we would, a dopehead or crackhead or anything like that. And again, we've made very long and big strides in our understanding of substance abuse in general, but we still have a really long way to go on figuring things out. And again, we've made a lot of advances in treatment as well, but obviously there are more effective ways, and hopefully we can stop the negative effects of alcohol abuse. Thank you.